Welcome, everyone. It's Suzanne and Margaret DeSantos today, and we're just going to have a little off-the-cuff discussion. It's a Monday discussion because we've been talking a little bit about project management trends, what's happening in 2026, and we have touched on a few of these things over last year around AI and storytelling, gamification. We've talked about a few things in the project management trends. And this time we're going to just look back a little way and see what we think's happening from our own experience over the last couple of months. How are you, Margaret?
I'm well, thanks, Suzanne. Thanks for asking. And super excited to talk about this topic because it feels like it's changing every day and there's new things that come and it's like an evolving door. So it'd be interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you sort of look at it, I always think that there's an arrogance in assuming that things are going to stay the same forever. So, even doctors, medicine changes, everything changes.
Yeah.
Technology is in everything, and I don't necessarily mean information technology, but technology, equipment is improving, safety is improving.
Right.
So everybody's got to be changing. So, are project managers, or is the project management profession being a little bit arrogant in not looking forward, or do you think they're looking forward, Margaret? Like, you're very involved in the PMI and the project management community, much more than I am now. What's your feeling? What's your take?
So in terms of the overall profession, I think parts of it are changing. And I see that, for example, because AI has amplified and there's been a lot of software companies that are springing up, and setting up themselves for AI integrations with, existing software and things like that. I'm finding that AI because it's totally exploded, there's a lot of data centers that are springing up.
Yeah.
Now that's infrastructure. So I see a lot of the potential project managers shifting across from software into infrastructure. And because a lot of AI companies are springing up, startups and things like that, then there's also the potential for sales type roles and things like that.
Okay.
And let's not forget that we've also got construction as a project management industry, and I think that that's exploded as well. There's been a high demand for housing and construction. So I see that and project engineers, I see that that's still exploding.
Right.
I think in terms of software, I think within the Sydney market, it's kind of like a lot smaller. And a lot of the roles have been split into, say, product and split into, say, procurement, split into governance or risk.
Yeah.
And so I'm finding that instead of having an overarching role that encompasses all of those things, where you might find that in bigger markets such as the US and the UK, then in these local markets, I think it's a lot smaller. So there's a lot less roles. AI has expedited the amount of work that is outputted by a project manager. So I'm finding that a lot of project managers are doing a lot more projects because AI can expedite a lot of the admin, and it's becoming more stakeholder focused, more, talking to vendors and things like that, rather than actually doing a lot of this, setting up the risk register where you can do that with using AI, helping to do the budget and forecasts and scheduling and dependency mapping and things like that, where AI can do a lot of that. So, yeah.
Now that's interesting that you say that, because I've always thought that, project management is a lot more than schedule management, and it's one of those things that you go and have an interview and they immediately say, well, did you do it on time and budget? And they talk to you a lot about schedule. And I've always thought, well, no, project management is about much more than that. And I've talked about that before. It's about the management. So you're sort of saying we're almost moving into a more strategic or analytical uh, uh, um, way of doing project management than what we've had before. And that's quite a shift, really.
Yes. I think the role, like you said, is becoming more strategic, more
Mm,
stakeholder focused, and so less on the, admin and having to set up these templates or set up
yes.
this admin or status reports, which
Yeah.
can be done, quite quickly using AI as a tool. It's like having an assistant and
Mm,
getting their assistant to do a lot of this background tasks or background work and focusing more on addressing the issues, stakeholder management, you know, I guess making sure that the risks are mitigated and you're monitoring all of
yeah.
that, you're making sure that it's on track, that a risk does not then turn into an issue
Mm,
and things like that. So it's also about, and we've talked about business cases before, and that's really the start. And a
mm,
business case is set up to make sure that whatever's being delivered is actually going to return on investment or protect the organization, say if it's a compliance issue, from getting fined or getting, if it's to do with your security, getting any data stolen or like protecting the organization. So, it's about implementing projects that do actually make money for the organization or save costs.
mm,
So
mm.
there's more emphasis on the outcome being, linking it to return on investment, linking it
Yes.
to the strategic objectives, which is basically
Yeah.
either to make money or save money.
Which is the value add of projects. And,
Yes,
I said to you before we started, when I saw this on the list, projects are becoming more outcome focused. Well, they should have always been that way.
yes,
But the amount of times I've had to say to people, have you got that link to the strategy? How do those deliverables, forget the milestones, how do those deliverables link with the organisational strategic plan? And the amount of time that project managers have looked back at me blankly, I think, well, where are you? What are we doing? So to me, what you're saying sounds like we're at last starting to elevate project management into a more strategic executive type of role. Um,
yes,
so it's actually more broad and looking much more forward. And as you're saying, becoming more outcomes focused. And I think it's interesting that you're saying about the stakeholder focus because, again, if you're watching out there, please subscribe to the channel because we talked about this before, the difference between change managers and project managers, and there's sort of a bit of a blur happening in this. So, in my experience, the change manager might say, "Oh, they're the stakeholders. I'll do that stakeholder management." And I've often said, actually, I'm happy for you to do the stakeholder analysis, but I'm going to do the stakeholder management because I'm the program manager. Um, and now I think it's a bit more blurred. I mean, what are you thinking, Margaret?
I'm thinking that I think it depends on the program or the project, because if there's a large, technology component of it,
Yeah,
usually the program manager has, I think, greater knowledge in terms of implementing the delivery of the technology, but then also the stakeholder management, and can delegate parts of the
yeah,
comms to, say, change manager.
yeah,
But if it's for example, if it's a
yes,
reorganization of
different.
different,
Yeah,
then it's probably purely change
yeah,
management,
yeah,
where the change manager is liaising a lot with HR,
yeah,
doing job descriptions and ensuring that
yeah.
the teams or the people are aligned to the different streams, and that's all aligned to the CEO and the
Mm,
organization. So you're not really delivering a change of technology. You're really delivering something that is changing, which is the way that people, that basically their job, the way that people do
Yeah.
things,
And
you
as you were
know.
saying that, and we talked about AI and project management, AI is going to come to the fore in change management for the
Mm,
job descriptions and aligning them.
yes.
That's going to be a significant change to that profession as well, the change managers. So just something to think about. Now we've talked about this before too. Hybrid delivery is the norm.
Mm,
Agile, waterfall, and hybrid approaches used together. Um, and we, Margaret, before I get you to answer this, we've also kicked around discussing the age demographic differences now with project management. We hopefully do that in another session. But are younger people, let's say millennials, are they starting to look at project management in a different way? And is it more hybrid? Um, and is that going to be the norm? Which is what we were going to talk about, because we've got this mix of agile teams,
mm,
people working more in a very flexible and fast way.
mm.
So, how do you see that? What's the trend there, Margaret?
I think that to be part of an agile team, to deliver something agile, and it's usually termed as a product manager or a scrum master, as and
Mm,
someone more, I say it's easier to do that job. It's easy to learn and faster to do it and faster to actually implement that role, as opposed to, say, someone who knows how to do a waterfall project.
mm,
And I've found in the past a lot of the financial type systems usually tend to be waterfall, because you need to
mm.
have everything in place before you
Yeah,
switch on the system.
yes,
So the
exactly.
financials need to work, and that's linked to reporting, and it's linked to the database, and it's linked to other things. And you can't really isolate, you can't really turn one on without turning all on at the same
Mm,
time. You could probably
yes.
delay reporting, but you're going to have to put in the reporting event,
Mm,
like pretty soon after you've gone live with the whole system.
mm,
So, and a lot of these hybrid type project managers have taken years to learn that craft, and it takes a lot of skill to be able to do that sort of work.
mm,
And so I think a lot of these millennials might struggle to learn how to implement a waterfall initially without being guided by, someone who's been in that profession for a long time.
yes, exactly, exactly. And I think words are so powerful, right? So waterfalls almost become a dirty word. And in the situation that you're talking about, and certainly when I was working at the university, y- you have to have a sequence.
Mm,
So what we might call waterfall, the waterfall effect of the project in this phase, that phase. Um, and then at times I've had, two or three agile teams beavering away on something, so they're actually building a piece of technology. But the other parts of the program are working in a sequence. Now, there could also be, this is where it gets real exciting, there could also be parts of that program that are working in parallel. So it can get quite complex, particularly if you're working across the organisation. So the project manager in that instance is there's a huge skill set, which is obviously why usually we're much more experienced and we get paid more money because you've got to craft all of those things and mix them and blend them together. We went through years ago, Margaret, where projects became smaller. Where in the late 90s or mid 90s, you'd have these massive big projects and then you'd have massive big bombs when they didn't work out.
yeah.
So we went through all of that and whittled things down to smaller projects, smaller projects. Now we're in agile teams. I mean, I'm just wondering if that's if there's a trend, like if there's something else coming that and you don't have to answer this, but if there's something else coming that's going to catch people out because they've got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and like we're just talking about waterfall sequencing, is that still a thing? Is it likely to still be a thing? I don't know.
Yes, and you know what? Agile, I know that a lot of agile teams that have not looked at anything that is cross-functional,
Yes.
which is what
Yep.
waterfall is really great at,
Yep.
they tend to find that they're redoing a lot of work because they didn't
Right.
consider something else from
Okay.
another team. And in
Yeah.
fact, that's important. It might be a legal requirement or it might
Yeah.
be a marketing requirement, for example, branding or something like that. And they didn't consider that, and then they have to go back to their code and redo some of that work
Mm.
for it to be in line with legal compliance, marketing, because like I
Mm.
said, it wasn't considered in the first place because
Yeah.
they're not a project manager. They might be a scrum master or they might be a product manager. So they're looking at it singly and singly business focused
Yeah.
and not looking at the implications of other teams or other work that is needed for it to be complete and whole.
And outside that, and if you're watching and you're an agile scrum master or a project person on large agile sites, we're not saying that agile people are not managing across their agile projects because you can quite often have a number of those happening at once.
Yeah.
We're talking about something quite different to that when we're talking. So, but if you'd like to talk, and send us some comments, that would be really good about how you out there are doing these things. So on the list, Margaret, is the greater emphasis on change management. I think I might come back to that because the next one in the list is stronger governance and a risk focus, particularly around technology. So that's interesting as well because that's sort of lifting us up. It's what we all should be doing anyway.
Yeah, I was about to say that. That should have been from the start. I mean,
Mm,
one of the first things, it's not the only thing, but one of
yeah,
the first things that you actually lift out of the business case is the risk profile, basically
yep,
the risk register.
mm,
And that's the starting point. And then you're going to basically not embellish, but improve and make it and grow it.
mm,
And so that should have always been the case. And governance, I mean, having your RACI, your roles and responsibilities, your roles, linking it back to strategy, which should also be in the business case,
yeah,
then and making sure you're always aligned to that, making sure that you've got these guardrails, making sure they're all on track, you're reporting. I mean, that's all governance, and that should have
yeah,
always been the case. And I think a lot of the reasons why this has come to a fore is because a lot of boards are getting wrapped over the knuckles because, they've got projects that are running rampant without,
yeah,
and they don't know how long it's going to take, how much money they've spent, and the pockets aren't we don't have an open checkbook.
mm.
I mean,
Not
or
anymore. No,
not anymore, but
yeah,
and what I'm saying is you don't have money that's ongoing. Usually
yeah,
there's a finite amount of money that you're delivering something,
exactly.
and also resources are usually not finite either. They're
Yeah,
usually already allocated to other programs, projects.
yeah,
And agile assumes you're doing the development in-house, and usually if you're outsourcing it to software vendors, they're usually doing the agile teams and the agile work.
mm.
So that's the reason why you need to have stronger governance, risk focus, which should have always been the case anyway.
So do you think that the governance and well, certainly the risk, but where I'm going with this is a much more a focus on the analytics. Like, we talked a bit about this with the project manager being more strategic. AI can deliver us better reporting faster. So
Mm.
the project manager, instead of being on the end of everything, like you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and now I'm going to get to my schedule and I'm going to type it all in. It sounds like the project manager is more of a questioning, well, what about this? What about that? And diving into that data analytics that's available, asking Chat GPT, which, I know you're really good at. Um, it sort of flips project management a little bit on its head. It's a different focus, I think.
I think it's just faster, and
Mm,
it just enables maybe the project manager to take on more work. And
right.
a lot of companies know that because the admin might have been expedited because you're using AI, you're using
Yeah.
assistants. So now instead of doing 2 projects or 3 projects, you can do 5 or 10.
Mm,
And that's what we're finding. And then so there's less roles as well available for
of
project
course.
managers,
Yep.
because now instead of hiring 3 or 4 project managers, we just need to hire 2, but we
Yeah.
give them more work. And we're finding that, I know you've mentioned that there are these project managers on Instagram that have got,
Yep.
17, 19 projects,
Yep.
and
And they're not
that
coping,
and they're
is
not
what they're saying.
coping.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's really coming to the fore. It's something that's now it's basically you're uncovering things, and this is what we're finding. But also,
Yes.
I
But
think
we
also,
can't be pushed either I think it's very, we need to be wary of
mm,
project management changing with a push from um, this need to do things faster and more
mm,
projects
mm,
rather than us looking at our actual skills and attributes and saying, well, how is that going to change? Do we focus as much on that particular attribute now, or do we elevate? And you talked about the stakeholder management and
mm,
the analytics. Um, so I think there's a danger of us potentially being pushed rather than the project management community leading, um, which we already see in some areas. We've lost a bit of control in how project management's seen, and that was one example that you gave, which we will talk about the 19 projects and. I'm the hero. We left all that stuff behind us in the 90s, the hero
mm,
stuff. So we don't want that to creep back in. But there's a danger of it, I think, Margaret, from what you're
mm.
saying.
I think
Mm,
I think if hiring managers or organizations are being a bit of, I call it like a cowboy, where they're thinking we can push the resources as much as
yes.
possible and just wait until they
Break.
fall off the perch,
Yep.
die.
Yep.
I mean, you don't want to
Mm,
do that. So that's not really encouraging well-being in the workplace, and so that's not the right way to go about it.
no, no. And is this link into this is also on the list, the smaller, faster delivery cycles. So we've got potentially more projects, less project managers, more
Mm,
cycles even,
mm,
incremental releases rather than large big bang projects. Well, that's been a trend now for probably 15 or so years,
mm.
because it
That's
used to
right.
be the big bang.
That's
And then
right.
my most unfavourite methodology, actually a little frame, what is it, bunch of templates, Prince 2. I'm not a fan of Prince 2. Prince 2 to me put everything into packets or work
Mm,
packets, whatever they call them. But then people didn't lift themselves out to see what the whole project was about. And then they got caught up in this, you know, isolated parts of projects. So that I think is also another danger with the smaller, faster delivery cycles. If you don't have a handle across the whole thing of what's happening.
mm. Well, that's what I talked about in terms of cross-functional. That's what you
Yes.
need to understand, because, and also, say I'm just going to say something like, just say you're delivering a website. I mean,
Mm,
the website is not just about delivering the front page and the static pages and then any forms or anything that goes with it. It's about ensuring that you've got the cookie policy, the privacy policy, and
Yes.
everything that the customer needs to be aware. And I mean, that's all legal and compliance. That needs to be in there before you go live, for example.
Exactly. It's not
So
an afterthought.
it's not an afterthought, and it's
Mm,
not something that can be done after you go live. It's probably a requirement for you to go live because, you could get into trouble. And I
yeah.
have known that where websites have had to close because the regulator has said you don't have sufficient, you know, policy information there or
Yeah.
notification to the customer for them to be aware what are the implications. And so
Mm.
they've made sure that the website is closed. I mean, you don't want to be in that position.
No, you don't want to be in that position. Now, we're also talking about PMs becoming strategic leaders, influencing executives, stakeholders and business transformation, not just managing schedules, which we sort of talked about at the beginning. But then you've got this note, skills are shifting, and increasingly influencing and adaptability is important. We talked about that, but you've also got there's a couple of other things in that little point, Margaret, around skills are shifting. How are they shifting?
Well, I think I kind of touched on it a little bit. So instead of doing a lot of the admin tasks, which are
Yeah,
being expedited by AI, it's about then negotiating and stakeholder engagement, stakeholder management,
right.
right?
Yes,
Conflict resolution.
yes.
And it's harder to pinpoint and it's harder to estimate the time for those things because it's not like, oh, I can whip up a status report in an hour,
Yeah,
and then AI can
yes.
do it in 2 minutes or whatever.
Mm,
With a conflict resolution, it's about, I don't know, talking to the stakeholder, then
mm,
maybe setting up a meeting between three parties potentially. So it's not something that you can concretely say, oh, I can deliver this in,
mm.
3 minutes now. Those things might take
Yes.
longer and it's harder to estimate how long those things will take. And same
And the
with
skills are
issues.
different.
The skills are
Yes,
different.
skills
More
are different. The
people manage,
strategic think, people
yeah, it's
management.
more people management,
Yes,
and yeah, negotiating
negotiation, influence. Like so,
influence.
when I started in IT 1,000 years ago now, people, um, the we used to call them grunts. Now, this is a terrible word now, of course, but they were the programmers. And what used to happen was the programmers would sit in rooms, and you'd go in there, and there'd be shuffling and pizza boxes, like all of that stuff that you've seen on the TV and films. It was a little bit true, right? Way back in the 90s, late 90s. Um, but now what's happened is that even your agile teams, they're not in the dark. They're often out talking to people. There are team members, your analysts and people like that. They're very much more closely integrated with the team and the programmers. So there's been a big shift in that real technical space. But I'm wondering if the project managers have also had that evolutional change or if it's still coming. Like we've got project managers I know that still, and I've seen this even, only recently, project managers that isolate themselves and they will sit with their head down doing their schedule and all of those sorts of things instead of getting out there and engaging with their stakeholders. They leave it to somebody else or it doesn't get done or they go, oh, the change manager can do it.
Well, see, the danger with that, because you're not keeping your customer in the loop and you're
Yeah.
not discussing things and looping back and adding, changing, and making sure that it's all encompassed. The danger with that is you talk to them in 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time, and then massive changes and rework has to be redone.
Mm, mm.
So it's not really ideal. You want to be able to, talk to them, kind of
Different
nourish
skills though.
them,
See, they're
different
different
skills.
skills
Yeah.
than what we always think of as a project manager. And we do see a lot of project managers that do that behavior that I talked to you about. And they
Mm.
don't necessarily even talk to their team. and I've seen that before.
But
So these are skills that we traditionally have seen as change management skills. The change manager will do that. And that's why I've sort of kept this till last, this change management thing, because we have talked about this almost crossover of project management and change management. Now, Margaret, you and I, and you more than me, are watching the jobs market at the moment. And I'm not seeing many project manager roles. I'm seeing some change manager roles, but do you think there is this now change that project managers are morphing or one's taking over the other, or is there still a clear delineation?
I think that a lot of the work is being I guess absorbed by project managers, especially if an organization only has budget to pay for one person.
Yeah,
And a lot of the expedited work that a project manager was doing before, like your admin status reports, your risk register, setting up and schedule dependencies and things like that can be done really fast.
yeah,
Then they're thinking, okay, what can we save on something else that the project manager can do?
yes,
And often it's
mm,
change management, because change management is, I think, a fairly new profession. It's only been
mm,
around for 20 years,
yes. And
as
we used
far
to
as
have to fight to get them. Once upon a time, they didn't even want to give us a change manager.
when I first started in project management,
Mm,
we had to do change management, and
yeah,
it's still part of, making sure that training, that the help desk, support desk is set up for any knowledge transfer. And still, in terms of technology delivery, that's still the case, making sure that the help desk is aware of some of the
mm,
technical changes, some of the level 1, level 2, level 3 support triage. That's still the case, but it's going beyond that. It's going beyond where the user needs to be aware of what are the changes, especially if the technology has been upgraded.
mm,
Or, for example, what are the changes from manual, like an Excel spreadsheet, to now a new software? How do we do this?
yes,
So a lot of the training manuals, etc., needed to be created, set up. BAs, that is business analysts, would potentially do a lot of that because they were intimate with the technology. They
mm,
knew how to set up users, log in and do a lot of the stuff that is done in technology. And so a lot of the work might have been done by a BA, but now these change managers are becoming like super users, understanding the software, understanding how to create a
right,
user guide, making sure
yeah.
that the users know how to log into a system, use the system, adopt the system.
That is absolutely right. And while you're
Mm,
saying that, Margaret, I'm thinking that for project managers, we need to be very aware of how that role is evolving as well, the
mm,
change management role. So everything is in a little bit of flux at the moment, I think. And probably for project managers out there, just be aware. And we have on the Project Manager Clinic, we've talked about gamification in project management. We've talked about storytelling. We've talked
yes.
about influencing. So we're not just talking about how to do risk management here. We are talking about what's the disruption, what's happening, how do we actually apply things. So, Margaret, we need to sort of wrap up now, but can you give me a summary? Can you say, the key points of what the trends are that we're talking about?
Yeah. So the key points are that a lot of the admin work has been expedited and assisted by AI, because AI
Yeah.
can do it a lot faster. So therefore, the role of the project manager is shifting more towards stakeholder management, stakeholder engagement, ensuring that the work and the outcomes of the program, of the project, is aligned to a strategy, which might be return on investment. It might be making sure that, there were cost savings, that
Yeah.
we're, saving on things like that. A lot of the work might be shifting towards change management. Like I said years ago when I first started, we always had to make sure that training was encompassed and communication was done. And a lot of the communication is still done by the project manager. Like we're going live.
Yep. Yep.
So, things like that. A lot of the project management work has shifted in that it's become more set in terms of faster delivery cycles, and so therefore it might be that they might be Scrum Master roles or product roles, and less so on the cross-functional, but that still is a requirement, especially for bigger companies, bigger countries that still require those sort of roles. And PMs are becoming more strategic. They're making sure that the governance and risk is encompassed in the work. It always should have been anyway, but there's a more, I guess, focus on the board to ensure that things are governed properly and that we don't have, things running rampant or not being with guardrails. And so therefore the skills are shifting. Like we said, they're becoming more people focused, engaged with, making sure that any conflict is resolved, which is hard to time box that. It's something that can't be, it's difficult to work out, okay, how do we estimate, fixing an issue or fixing a resolution of a conflict or things like that. So
if you're out there and you're listening and you're a project manager, we've gone through a number of things, but, in order to probably stay in the market, you need to be very aware of how things are evolving, and not just in your role as project manager, but how in the other roles of, the smaller teams, the hybrid teams, what's going on there. Needs to really make yourself aware what's going on with change management. And also, Margaret, which you pointed to, which I think is really important, which sort of reflects a little bit on the recruitment, is organisations are pushing project managers to do more projects because of this idea that AI is going to do a lot of the work.
Yep.
So as a project management community, we need to be aware, I think, too, of that trend. Do we want to be pushed? Are we willing to, take that bit of information and evolve ourselves? As a project management community, I would suggest that we would be better to lead that evolvement rather than let it just take us over. So on that sort of note, I think, Margaret, I'm going to wrap up. There's a lot more things that we can talk about, and I think we should do one of these trends for change management as well. So hopefully we'll get that happening. There's a lot to come, people, if you're out there. If you've been listening to the channel, you may know that I've had a broken arm, so I've slowed down, but we're getting ramping back up again. And please remember to go to the website and have a look at the Ask a Mentor sessions that are now available on site. So they're focused sessions, and there's information on that on the website. And thank you so much, Margaret.
You're welcome.
It's been great. Thanks, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.
Have a great project day.